Title: The Forgotten Grave That Awoke After 50 Years. The Grave Beside the House. Subscribe now. If you dare to hear what happens when the dead finally wake up. The storm had rolled in fast that night. Wind whipped against the windows of the old Charleston farmhouse as lightning flashed across the yard, illuminating the outline of the forgotten cemetery behind the house. Emma stood by the kitchen window, her reflection ghost-like against the glass. For a split second, she swore she saw someone standing among the gravestones just before the lights flickered and went out. They had only moved in 3 days earlier. The house was a dream for them, a fixer-upper with history and charm. But the locals had warned them in quiet tones. That land ain't right. They said it had been untouched for decades, that strange things happened near the cemetery. Emma and her husband Tom laughed it off. Until that night, the storm raged for hours. Around midnight, Emma woke to the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate crunching on wet gravel. She shook Tom awake. He grumbled, pulling himself up, "It's probably an animal." But when he looked out the window, the motion sensor light on the porch flickered on. There, in the corner of the cemetery, stood a single grave marker cracked, leaning forward with mud slowly sliding off its surface, as if it had been unearthed. Tom grabbed his flashlight and raincoat. Emma protested, but he stepped out into the storm. The beam of his flashlight cut through the sheets of rain, illuminating the overgrown path that led to the graveyard. The deeper he went, the colder the air grew unnaturally cold. He reached the broken tombstone. It was old, older than any others there, its engraving nearly faded. But as Tom wiped away the mud, he froze. The name on the stone was Thomas W. Leland, his full name. Tom stumbled back, his flashlight flickering out for a second, and when it came back on, something was different. The ground before the grave had sunk slightly like a breath exhaled from beneath the soil. By the time he returned to the house, his clothes were soaked and his face pale. Emma met him at the door, trembling. "Tom, someone was knocking on the back door while you were gone." He turned sharply toward the hallway that led to the rear of the house. The old wooden floor creaked under his steps. The knocking came again. 3 slow, heavy knocks. He flung the door open, nothing but rain and darkness. But when he looked down, muddy footprints trailed from the doorway back toward the cemetery. That night, neither of them slept. The next morning, Emma found something new outside. A small wooden box placed neatly on the porch. Inside was a rusted brass key and a piece of brittle paper with 3 words scrawled in faded ink, "Let me out." Emma wanted to leave immediately, but Tom refused. "Someone's playing with us," he said. "This place has stories, that's all." He convinced her to stay another night. But as dusk settled over the property, Emma began to notice subtle changes, the faint scent of freshly turned soil in the air, the soft tapping of fingernails against the wall whenever the house went quiet, and the low hum of a voice's whispering from outside the window. At exactly 11:50 p.m., the house grew cold. The rain had stopped, but the air was still thick and heavy. Tom sat in the living room, staring at the old box on the coffee table. Then a faint thud echoed through the floorboards beneath his feet. He looked up at Emma. "Did you hear that?" The sound came again. Thud, thud, thud. It was coming from underneath the house. Tom grabbed his flashlight and crawled beneath the floor through the old cellar hatch. The beam flickered across damp earth and rotted beams, and then landed on something impossible. There was a small wooden door built-eyed, end to the foundation. Its hinges rusted, its frame sealed with iron nails, and carved into the wood were the same 3 words from the note. "Let me out." As Emma called down for him, Tom reached toward the handle, and from behind the door something knocked back. The name in the dirt. The following morning, the air around the house felt different, heavier, like the air before a thunderstorm. Tom didn't speak about what happened in the cellar, but his face told Emma enough. He hadn't slept, neither had she. When she went to make coffee, she noticed muddy footprints across the kitchen floor, small, barefoot like those of a child. Tom froze when he saw them. "I locked every door last night," he whispered. By noon, the sounds started again. Scratching faint at first, then sharper, faster coming from inside the walls. Emma pressed her ear to the plaster and swore she heard breathing. Tom forced a smile. Old house, mice, maybe. But she saw the fear in his eyes. Later that afternoon, Tom called the previous owner. The woman's voice trembled when he mentioned the cellar. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked. "That door was never supposed to be opened." Before Tom could ask why, she hung up. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m., she woke to a faint humming sound. It was coming from outside. She looked out the window and gasped Tom was standing barefoot in the cemetery, facing the broken gravestone. She ran outside, shouting his name. But when she reached him, he didn't turn. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, his lips moving slowly, whispering words she couldn't understand. Then he looked at her, his face pale and expressionless, and said, "It's my turn to go back," Emma screamed. Tom collapsed into the mud, gasping for breath. When she helped him inside, he looked dazed. "I heard her," he whispered. "She said the grave was never mine." The next morning, the smell of damp soil filled the house. Emma followed it to the living room and found the old brass key from the box lying in the middle of the floor. Around it, carved into the wood, were words written in fresh mud. "Bring it back." Emma wanted to run, but Tom refused to leave. "If this thing wants something, we have to find out what," he said, his voice trembling. He took the key and went to the cellar again. Emma begged him to stop, but he was determined. The air downstairs was cold enough to sting. When Tom approached the small wooden door, the ground around it pulsed faintly, as if something beneath was moving. He turned the key, it fit perfectly, and the lock clicked open. Behind the door wasn't a room. It was a tunnel, narrow, sloping downward, its walls slick with soil. A faint whisper echoed from below. Emma grabbed his arm. "Tom, don't." But he stepped forward anyway. At the end of the tunnel lay a coffin, half-rotted, its lid slightly ajar. Tom wiped away the dirt from the nameplate. The metal was rusted, but still readable. Thomas W. Leland, 1874, 1923. The date of death was exactly 50 years before the year Tom was born. Then came the sound, a long, low moan rising from the coffin. The lid began to move. Emma screamed and pulled him back as the earth shifted. Something was clawing its way up skeletal hands, gray and trembling, reaching through the soil. The tunnel filled with the smell of rot and the sound of whispering voices. Tom shouted, "She's taking me back!" As the hands closed around his ankle, Emma pulled harder, sobbing. With a final heave, she yanked him free, and they scrambled out of the cellar, slamming the door shut behind them. The house shook, every window rattled, and from deep below a voice not human growled, "You opened the grave. You belong to me now." The lights flickered, then went dark. When dawn came, the house was silent. The cellar door stood open, and Tom was gone. The house was silent. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but watched. Emma stood in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she dialed 911. Her voice cracked as she tried to explain that her husband had vanished. The dispatcher asked if she'd checked the property. "No," she whispered. I can still hear him down there." From the open cellar door came the faint sound of breathing, slow, deep, wrong. When the police arrived, they searched the grounds but found nothing. No sign of Tom, no footprints, not even the broken coffin underground. They told Emma it was probably shock, that she needed rest, but she knew what she heard. That voice wasn't her imagination. That night, she didn't sleep. Around midnight, she heard the floorboards creak above her footsteps, pacing across the bedroom ceiling. Her stomach dropped. The bedroom above was empty. Then came the whisper, "Emma." It was Tom's voice. She ran upstairs, calling his name. The room was dark except for the dim light spilling through the curtains. The smell of soil filled the air. And on the bed, something had been written in the dirt, the same words carved into the coffin. "Bring it back." The next morning, Emma drove to the county archives. She found old property records and photographs dating back to the early 1900s. In one black and white photo, she froze the man standing beside the newly built farmhouse looked exactly like Tom. The caption read, "Thomas W. Leland, owner of the Leland Cemetery, 1923. Her heart pounded. The man she married wasn't the first Thomas Leland. He was the next one. Emma raced home. She had to see the grave again. The cemetery was drenched in fog, the air unnaturally still. She found the broken tombstone in the corner, but this time it was no longer cracked. It was clean, restored, freshly sealed into the earth. And the name had changed. It no longer read Thomas W. Leland. It now said Emma Leland, 1979 to 24. She staggered back, trembling, as whispers began rising from the ground, surrounding her. Hands reached up through the soil, gripping her ankles. She screamed and tore herself free, running toward the house, but when she reached the porch, the door was already open. Inside, the lights flickered on by themselves. The smell of earth and decay filled every room. On the wall, near the cellar door, someone had drawn handprints in mud, dozens of them, all leading downward. The whisper came again, soft, coaxing, right by her ear. "You brought me back." The floor beneath her creaked, splintered, then gave way. Emma fell into the cellar, hitting the dirt hard. Pain shot through her leg, but before she could crawl away, she saw it, a figure standing near the wooden door. It looked like Tom. His face was pale, lifeless, his eyes sunken. "It's not done," he said softly. "She needs another to take her place." Then the door behind him burst open. A shadow surged forward, tall, thin, and impossibly fast. It wrapped around him, pulling him into the darkness. He didn't fight. He just whispered, "I told you not to open it." The door slammed shut. When the neighbors reported the house abandoned weeks later, police found only one thing left in the cellar: a freshly carved tombstone standing upright in the dirt. The name on it read, "Emma Leland, beloved wife. She brought him home." And every night since, people say that if you stand near the fence of that old Charleston cemetery at 3 a.m., you can still hear a woman's voice calling softly through the fog. Don't answer. It's calling your name next. If you thought this story was terrifying, the next one will haunt you even more. Hit subscribe if you dare.